I
Go ahead.
I so I didn't move to America, but I am an actor. I'm fluent in English. I think my English, my accent is pretty decent. And I shot my first feature long film this year with an American director. So yeah, not bad, not bad. Pretty happy.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah,
So
right.
how many have we got? So
1, 2,
Veronica.
3, 4, 5, 6, 6 people if we don't count you and me. But I guess it's like good enough for
Yes,
me. If it's like
it's
I
it's
think,
good enough for me. So rather than keep everybody hanging around, shall we
yeah,
start? And then if
yeah.
other
I
people
will start
join,
the.
we'll
I will.
adjust them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will start the Zoom or the live stream right now, and we'll start kind of official
Okay.
official
Yes.
part.
Well,
So yeah, yes.
goodness, I'm wondering.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Jerry. So for us. Those who don't know me, I'm Veronica, and I'm the president of West Association. We're international theater association that unites now 74 members already from around the world, festivals, theaters, drama schools, everyone who is doing theater and doing it in English. And today, we are meeting for our monthly and from now on, I hope bi-monthly theater club, a discussion where theater makers from everywhere in the world can get together and discuss different issues, different topics that they care about and they want to talk about. And this one is special because it's the start of like branching out where we as West or association give you the place to speak, give you members the chance to lead the discussion, because usually we choose the topic separately and propose it to you. And now you can propose the topic to us and lead this discussion, share your experience and exchange your experience with others. So our first, I don't know, facilitator, English, yes, special guest is John Farndon, and he will tell about himself in a minute. So, John, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Yes, of course, as you probably gathered from the title of this club, it's Translating the Stage, and the focus is very much on translation. So before I start, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself in the phone, but I just want to, because translation is the center of this, I just want everybody to introduce themselves very briefly, essentially to identify their native language and also the different languages they work with. So if we can go around, I'll shout out who to talk. I know we've heard from you, Julie, but it'd be good to recap for the benefit of those who haven't heard. So yes, I'm John Farndon. My only spoken language is English, but I've translated by collaboration from about 30 different languages, from Mandarin to Kazakh, from Uzbek to Spanish, from Portuguese to Belarusian to Ukrainian. So about 30 different languages. And I do that by collaboration, basically. I translate into English. So, Julie.
So I am a native French speaker, and I also happen to be fluent in English. I have several times. I know actually. The only I'm not an interpreter or translator because it's a real job, as you probably already know that. But I run my own theater company. Oh, you cannot hear me well.
We hear you. I hear you.
Yes, we're hearing you well. I think that was just one moment someone was chipping in, so
Okay.
don't worry.
All right. So I run my own theater company based in Paris, France, and from the very start, I wanted to make it international and I wanted to make theater in English. And the first production that we had was Fool for Love by Sam Shepard, which was already translated in French. The second production, which is the current one, production of my theater company, is L'Imposteur, which was written for me by an American director slash playwright slash writer who doesn't speak French at all. And that play, which I will be performing for the Ukraine French in September, that play has parts performed in French. It's in French, it's performed in French and in English. And obviously, since the writer was not a French speaker, I had to work on the translation of the French parts, which has been a long and tremendous work because I did it with, just like you, John. It was several collaborations that allowed to have like a proper work, and there are several steps that I notice when you do translations, but I think we'll come to that with everyone. So basically that's the background for me. Thank you.
If we can keep it brief for the moment, because we'll come back to questions. Thank you for that. That's great. I just want to get an idea of the range of languages we've got in here first. So if we can just keep it quite brief, and we'll come back and explain. No, don't worry. And that's my fault for not explaining clearly. But yeah, if we can keep it brief and just say who you are and what your main languages are. So Heather.
Oh, Heather Massey. I perform a solo show, Hetty, The Life and Inventions of Hetty Lamar, which I performed. I'm saying more than you asked for, but I'm just giving context of who I am. So I performed at the Pro English Theater's Pro Act Fest in Kyiv in 2020. I perform exclusively in English with a dash of German words, and I have performed with Italian super titles. And I'm presently seeing the need for super titles. I've been fine in English in most countries, but the ones that speak Arabic, I want to have translation in Arabic for some upcoming shows that might also involve French. I can talk more about that later.
Thank you. Jerry. Jerry, are you there?
Oh, we have more people joining. See?
Okay, we've lost Jerry. So Peace, would you like to introduce yourself briefly and just tell us which languages you work in? No? Peace? Can you hear me? No, she can't. Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's go. You can. Ah, great. Yep.
Hello. Hi. I am Chikelo Chinelo. I'm Nigerian. I speak and write in English language, and I also write in my native language called Igbo language as well.
Yes.
So I have been interested in trying to do a kind of like a collection of unique folk stories that I've heard from my relatives. And I'm looking to doing that, both collecting this information both in the Igbo language as well as in translating it to English. So that's my interest in this.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, Angela.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know where to open the video. My name is Angela. I'm from Albania. My native language is Albanian. I translate from English, Italian, and German more rarely. I'm a theater director and I have a PhD in cultural anthropology and theater. And my next step is I've just opened a new editing house in Albanian, translating especially plays. I've been translating since 22 years now, books and literary books and movies. but now I'm into translating theater because I feel competent doing it.
Thank you. And Suzanne. Suzanne, can you
I'm
hear me?
Suzanne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just unmuting, which was helpful. I'm
Yes.
Suzanne Bachner. I'm a playwright and director based in New York, and I'm the artistic director of JMTC Theater. And and English is my primary language. I'm a monolinguist, sadly. But in my baby days, I actually did an extensive project translating Norwegian poetry with a collaborator who was born and raised in Norway and spoke very good English, but I lent a little more of the in-depth English side of it. So
Thank you. Okay, Jerry, are you here now? Are you with us?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. I
Brilliant.
I hope you are hearing me because I'm in a
Yes.
bit of a noisy background. Okay, so my name is Jerry Adeshiu. I am a theater maker from Nigeria, and I run the group, Aroja Royal Theater. And very presently, as you can see on my picture display, we are working to stage the first International Theater Festival in Abuja, where I am based. And I do producing and directing primarily, and I also write plays. And I am festival director for this project. And only recently, I also just worked on my first translation. Okay, maybe that's the second, but the very first, professionally done one. I just completed the translation of Insulted Belarus, Yoruba language.
Yeah.
And I am presently working on the translation of the same play for the Pidgin language, which is called the Niger language. It's an adulterated version of English language, which is generally spoken in Nigeria. So I have been a member of West since inception, and it's good to be on this platform once again. Thank you, and good to see you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Now, have I introduced everybody now? Is anybody not? If you haven't, shout now.
Oh.
No, I think we've got everybody.
I haven't been introduced.
Yeah.
Ah,
I haven't
yes.
been introduced.
Who's that? Hello?
Adejoke.
Adejoke. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got everybody. Okay.
No,
well,
no. Adejoke.
Oh. So she didn't. We didn't get you, did we? No, I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Adejoke Iwandelu. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a translator. I translate from English to Yoruba, Yoruba to English. I've translated a couple of plays. I've translated websites. I've translated books, and I've translated poems too. I'm happy to be here. Good to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's fantastic. So what's amazing is just the range of languages we've got here. And I feel kind of very privileged as an English speaker that all these people who have other languages at their disposal we can come together and speak in English. And I think actually English is at the center of translation. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit before we branch out and we have discussions a bit. I'm going to talk a bit about my experience of translation and particularly why I'm here. And then we'll come back and get everybody to talk together. So what I'd like to talk about is first of all, is why it matters to translate plays. And I'm going to talk about particularly why I've got involved with West, and that's through the Worldwide Ukrainian Play Reading Project and other projects yes, exactly. Thank you, Veronica. This is a project that began about 15 months ago. I mean, within 2 months of the beginning of 2 weeks of the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And it was initiated by Maxim Piroshkin of the Theatre of Playwrights in Kiev and John Farndon, who's an American drama critic. Their idea was to translate new Ukrainian plays, not just existing Ukrainian plays, but actually to start the ball rolling and they got funding from the Filipino Center in America to kickstart new plays from Ukrainian playwrights. And actually within 3 weeks, we had got plays translated and staged and read in various things. And over the past year, we've had, I think it's about 400 play readings around events around the world. And we've had about 60 to 70 plays translated. I've basically, the English translations have been done mostly by myself and John, but there have been translations into 30 different languages so far. So it's been an extraordinary project because not only are all the plays witnesses to what's going on in Ukraine, but they are amazing pieces of literature. And and for the first time, I think, and it's kind of sad that this is how it should come about, but Ukrainian playwrights are visible on the world stage. And I think that's incredibly important. For instance, then there are two playwrights, Alina Astasieva and Andrew Bondarenko, who were unknown outside Ukraine a year ago, but now they've had 90 readings and productions each around the world. So they are becoming visible. And playwrights like Natalia Vorozhbit, who was known a little bit, yes, around the world. Yes, those Bad Roads is the kind of visual you're looking for. But don't worry, it's not important. I'll talk, if you can't find it, it's not important. But yes, her play Bad Roads has been performed many, many times. It was made into a film. But also, I was lucky enough to work with, yes, this is the film Bad Roads, which is made into a film and it's been viewed many times. And it's the first kind of Ukrainian film that's been recognized across the world. And it's been recognized because, as you can see from the title, it's been recognized in translation, and that's actually really important. My own experience was with a play called Pussycat in Memory of Darkness, which was written by the playwright Neda Nejdana. And we staged that in the Finborough Theatre in England. And as you can see from that, it got rave reviews, and it was quite extraordinary because it's the first piece of Ukrainian theatre that's been so well received. It was nominated as one of the three best plays of 2022 by the Offies, and then it toured back to Kiev, and it's the only foreign production that's been to Kiev, and it was welcomed by our wonderful friends in the Pro-English Theatre in Kiev, and that was a great pleasure to do. So yes, and it's now being performed in Wiesbaden and various other things. What was interesting about, for instance, doing these plays in translation, one of the reasons why I says it is that when Ukrainian audiences came to see those plays, even in English, and English people, is that their voices were being heard, and that, for instance, then when we did the play in Wiesbaden, the mayor of Wiesbaden came, and seeing the production in English, he said after that, "This has been incredibly important to me, seeing this play, because now I understand for the first time why these refugees are in my city and what I can do, what I need to do to help them." And I hadn't really appreciated that before. So this is why I feel translation is important, because that mayor would not have seen the play if it had been Ukrainian. And similarly, it comes to plays from other languages as well. So I think that it's a question of building, the translations build bridges. So that's why I kind of think it's incredibly important to translate things, because otherwise we don't understand what we get. A one-sided vision with just get a very limited perspective. Now, just before I get on to discussion, I just want to play one translation that I did, that I was asked to do by Alex Borovensky of the Pro-English Theatre, and it's this one. Yes, so It's a play. It's a poem by Tanya Vlasova. Yes, so let's listen to it.
Don't look for his humanity.
Oh, sorry.
Don't talk to the enemy at all, he says. Don't look for his humanity. It's easy not to when you're drenched in blood and smoke's calamity. When everything that we have built has become so fragile utterly. No, I don't have the time to look for the human in my enemy. I certainly didn't choose, he says, to bring this winter on me. But the snowflakes are falling here as the dying fall around me. Falling. Falling without end, falling on unstoppably. Why on earth at this time should I converse with my enemy? Why should I even try to understand his mentality? Better to drive him far away so that he can see things plainly. I do not want the enemy to love me or respect me. I want him to be shit scared and not to hurt my children cruelly. It's easy, really, he says, when there's death all around you. Look in the eyes of the enemy. Look long and hard and true. Look within for all the lost lives and every ravaged city. So, he says, I'll do my job, and the snow will melt before me.
Thank you. Okay, so the reason for showing that poem is that actually that was an important message that Tanya was creating, is that so many kind of people in the West have this idea that, well, we can negotiate with the Russians and you can end the war by that. And actually, it was quite important for her to send this message as if from a soldier, that it's not, this can't be done. There's a crisis. And so I could say this, but it's so much more powerful if it's Ukrainian speaking for the voice. And that's why translation is urgent, because this was an urgent message that needed to go out. I don't know how many people heard it, but that is the purpose. So yeah, I'd just like to, so that's, I'd like just to finish up, and I'd like to kind of open up to the people here we have. So I'd just like, would anybody here like to share their experience of translating one particular play?
Julie?
They've all gone quiet. They've all gone horribly quiet.
Julie,
yeah.
yes.
Julie is waving. Julie.
Well,
No,
translating.
Yes.
Can I go ahead?
So, thank you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. But my experience, this is what, so I only had one experience, which was pretty recent, but lasted over almost 3 years. Like I said earlier, the second production of my theater company was written by an American writer, but some parts are to be performed in French. And so I had to translate those parts. But I'm not a professional, I'm not a translator, I'm not an interpreter. This is a real job. I don't translate anymore in my head between French and English and French. But, and also this is theater, this is poetry. So I, with the first director, the first person who was supposed to direct the play 3 years ago, who happens to be American, and now she's French, so she's bilingual. So she was a perfect person to work on the translation. And it took the both of us to work on that, to exchange ideas, to have, because English is not my mother tongue and French is not her mother tongue. So that was a real, that was like the perfect combination for us to work on the language, to share ideas, to have something as organic as possible. But that was the first step, because that's when you are around the table and you're exchanging ideas and you just speak out the lines and try them out that way to see if it feels natural, if it feels organic. And at the same time, are you respecting the original material? And you won't, because it's a different language. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so how do you find that thin balance, that very thin balance between sticking to the original, being truthful to the original, and at the same time, it's a new language and it has to make sense in the new language, and even try to make up a new language within the new language. I don't know if it's clear, but so that's pretty much, and it takes a long time because it has to, you need time to make sure that what you translated works, and time is going to provide this. So this is the first step: writing, exchanging ideas, writing down ideas, translating, and et cetera, and et cetera. Then you have the stage moment. And this is a big deal, because if your translation doesn't pass that test, there is something wrong. So yeah, because this is organic, this is life on stage, and a language is life. So is it working? Can I act with those words? Does it feel obvious to say that? And this is the actor's job, my job, more than an interpreter or translator. So that was my, and the third step had been, because I had a second director. And so when we started rehearsing, and so I'm performing in French and in English. So obviously I have to project subtitles. And my second director, who is also bilingual, she's French, but she is fluent in English, and she studied English, and she is a translator. So she gave her insight as well. She perfected it, let's put it that way. And in doing, and with the subtitles, because it's another way of understanding the language. It's not the actor you're watching, it's reading at the same time that it's watching actors acting. And so the way you grab the language is different than the way when you hear it from a mouth, coming from a body. So that was also another layer to the translating work. And there are still some stuff when I'm checking on the subtitles, I'm like, oh, maybe I can change that, which I can, because I did the translation. So this is my work, which is very convenient, to be honest, because when you have to work with the translation of someone else, like an official translation, you cannot touch one thing. And the problem with translations that you cannot touch, they're dated in time. And when you want to do a play, but it was done like 30 years ago, the language has evolved in between. And it sometimes makes it very difficult, and it doesn't sound clear or natural. And a translation is the nowadays language. That's the reason why, for example, I think we're the English speaking world has Shakespeare, which is wonderful, but Shakespeare, the verses of Shakespeare will never change. Whereas as a foreigner, we get to have every year, every 2 years, every 5 years, a new translation. And it makes it, I think we're luckier in that sense that we understand it more because it's always accessible to nowadays standards. So this is also a cool thing, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. That covered so much ground and raised some absolutely fascinating points, which we'll come back to later. But and particularly there's so many points. But Adijoki, you were going to say something. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just. Oh, sorry.
And then Angela. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I was going to talk about being a translator and then working with a movie director or a film director. The Insulted that Jerry just worked on, I did the translation and we had to put our ideas together because I, as a translator, I may not be able to convey the actual act. I can translate the words from English to Yoruba, but I am not able to interpret the stage movement. And that is where we had to come together. There is a difference between translating a play and bringing the play to life. So for every play to come successful, there's a need for the translator to work hand in hand with the director so that we can have a full expression. Apart from that, there are so many words in English language that you cannot get direct translation for in Yoruba. So there is a need for you to actually think and understand what the play is all about before you can actually bring out that thought. So it calls for time. And even as you're taking your time, you know that there is a need to meet up with the producer's work plan too. So translating Insulted was very good for me, and it was eye-opening for me because I was able to pass what he wanted, and we got a fine presentation. I'm sure that by the time we are having the stage play and the film is going to be very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. And Angela, you were going to say something, weren't you?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask what specifically are you asking about experience with translations? Because one play is not similar to the others. There are different challenges. Even though do you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
my screen feels like it's frozen because different playwrights offer different experiences. Okay, the main experience remains how to translate it properly for the stage, which means the language has to be active, and you always have to take present actors the way they act, the way they dialogue with each other, which is helpful when you're coming from theater experiences. Because mainly translators that do not have stage experiences, they just try to change the dialogue. They tend to be more narrative, which is not good for the actors. They don't have this active language that they have to speak through. But then the challenges are different. For example, when you translate Omnial, it's too poetic, the language, and you have to be more concrete nowadays. When you translate, let's say, the French one, Yasmina Reza, she has these particular details that it's like sort of foods or other details that she needs in order to make her abstract scenes, to turn them into real ones. So you have to explain to the actors what's going on. And I have this Western experience where the background, it's they are Hebrew. They're Hebrew, communist Hebrew, so you have to write extended notes for the director and the actors to understand what's going on in the background. So it's challenging all the time. It's challenging. It depends on the play. What I can say from the main experience is that you always have to have present the actors and the scene, what goes on actually on the stage. And the second one, the background, which I find very important to be explained to directors and to be half of the research done. So not specifically made notes so they understand the context. And then the style depends on what sort of play and which time you are translating. I just can say that every play that I read now, I read them in translation into my head.
Thank you, Angela. That's great. And actually, there's a couple of points that both Angela and Adjoki make. Is that actually, and I think it's absolutely crucial that translation is not translating for the stage is not simply a linguistic process. Actually, the translator has to, or one part of the translation process needs to really understand the demands of the stage and the actors. For instance, then the playwrights write subtext which can't be translated, but it has to be there in the translation. So we'll come back to that in a minute, but I just want to kind of break off for a minute because there was a point that that Julie made earlier on, is that it's a slow business translation, that you need patience, and that's true. But one of the things that was extraordinary for me about getting involved in the Ukrainian translation is there was a real urgency. We couldn't wait 2 years for a translation because these were plays that were written, the early plays were plays that were written in a week. And then to hold on to them for 2 years or even 2 months translating them seems absurd. So actually, I think that's true with a lot of contemporary playwrights, is that they can't necessarily wait. They are plays for today and they need to be translated today. And so we need to find a way of translating them. So yes, there was, for instance, there were a couple of the plays where Julia Gonchar's play was written within a week of the opening of the full-scale invasion, and then it was put on in translation in the Finnish National Theatre within 10 days after that. So those things are quite important because they kind of create a sense of urgency. But so I just want to have a breakout group now, and you divide into little groups and talk amongst yourself to ask, and it touches on what you've said earlier, to ask yourself what directors and actors and theatres managers require from translations. So you've already touched on that. Maybe you can develop that discussion between yourselves. So Veronica, would you like to divide them into breakout rooms? Thank you.
Yes, so now
you've done it already. Brilliant.
Yes, so now you can enter the breakout room and a couple people will stay with me.
Right.
Yes, because we usually,
Okay.
So yeah, the question was, yes, what do actors and directors and theater makers require from translation? Demand from translators and translations. Like, what do we need? Why do we need translations?
Maybe missing you.
I can't quite hear you. You're breaking up. I'm here. I'm back. Can you hear me? Hello.
Breakout room right now?
No, hello. Yes.
Oh, hello. Yeah, we're in the break.
I said, are we?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Breakout
Yeah, no, you
room
should
now,
be.
but I think we just lost. Oh, there she's back.
Yes, I'm back. Yeah, because I am
choppy on the video, but I got you back.
Yeah, because because I am live streaming and recording, I can't go into breakout room. So I decided to create a separate breakout room with the people.
I have not worked in Nigeria yet, but I've been in Tunisia recently, and Egypt and Zimbabwe and South Africa.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Hey, Hey, Veronica, I'm not hearing you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Is she
Hello?
still on here?
She,
Yeah, I
yes,
am.
yeah, she just got back in.
Yeah, we can hear her now here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
your signal was quite strong until the breakout rooms, and now the
because
challenges.
yeah, because I'm, like my computer is handling like 2 breakout rooms, recording and live streaming.
Yeah.
So I guess it just said it's too much for me.
Yeah.
I guess
It just
that's
kicked you out, but we got to stay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think you were trying to say that I think you said that what we're supposed to discuss is what do directors, actors, and theater managers require in translation?
Yes. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, yes. So what John had proposed that we speak about is the question, what do directors, actors, and theater managers require in translation?
Okay. Okay.
For me, I haven't worked as an actor in a play that's been actively translated, except that I had an Italian translation performances, or a couple of my performances in Italy. And I super titles, because I learned that for super titles, not everything, they do an initial translation where everything's translated, and then someone chooses what of the translation gets shown on the super titles. So me as the artist and the writer, I was a little sad to know that everything I was saying wasn't being communicated through the super titles. But it's good for me to understand that. So I don't know Italian. I was not involved really in that translation process. The festival took care of that, but I kind of would have liked to been a little more involved to really understand what the experience of the audience would be. So my experience was a little different than I guess the standard might be.
Well, I hear you, because when we were like working with the stage readings of Ukrainian plays in English with directors from all over the world, we also encountered this problem where you would like to, as a Ukrainian who speaks English, you read the translation to English and then you compare it to original, and you understand that you would like to change some things, right? You would like to somehow adapt it so it sounds like the message is more clear, because like I understand the Ukrainian and English, so I could, and you are not sure how possible is that. So you have to contact, like you have to ask permission for, and some translators or some playwrights don't give this permission to change the text, or like they are very precise on what you can and cannot change. So I wish sometimes
but that's
people would be more open.
I mean, that's right. So you that there would have been more of a dialogue between the writer and the translator maybe, but so there is an advantage in having some knowledge of both languages, because I'm so grateful to have the translation in Italian so that people who don't know English could understand it. But I feel a bit in the dark, because I don't really know how my show was represented. I don't know what was communicated in Italian and whether it really represents what I said. And now I'm facing really wanting an translation in Arabic, because I'm supposed to go back to Tunisia, hopefully for a festival, and And I was like, I really need an Arabic translation for super titles. But then that because they also speak French, somebody said, oh, you should have both. So I'm like, oh my God, it's hard enough to do one, but now you have to have two, and that what you put on the screen makes sense for what needs to be communicated at any moment. So I'm a little overwhelmed and trying to figure out how that happens, because of course I don't speak French, but at least I can get a little bit out of French. I can get nothing out of Arabic because I don't even know the alphabet. So so this is a big challenge for me. So I'm glad that this was sort of brought up as a topic. Of course, me looking at it for super titles is slightly different than what other people are addressing as, you know, wholesale translation for performance in another language. So there's you know, different sides of the same translation issue. Hey John. Yeah.
Hello there.
Hey John, would you like to call everybody back already?
Yes, I think so. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can continue the discussions of the group.
Yeah. Chinello, am I pronouncing that right? What would you like to say about the matter? Because maybe I missed out on what you wanted to say.
Did you hear us, Chinello?
Hello?
Veronica was asking what you might want to add to the conversation.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so I said I have more questions than contribution because I am just about to start my translation. Like I want to do, like I said before, I'm trying to work on a project where I collect folk tales, very unique folk tales from my relatives and other parts of the country, and then collect them in the native language, and then also translate them to English language. So I really, I don't have much to say, but what you guys have been saying have been really insightful. But I wanted to ask some questions. When you say super title, do you mean subtitles?
Oh, yeah. So we'll say a movie with translation, they're usually subtitles on the bottom of the screen. Subtitles are, yeah, it's sub because it's on the bottom. So super titles are the same, but they're super titles, which means they're at the top. So they generally run on a sliver of a projection screen above the action of the play, so people can watch the action and read and go back and forth between the action and reading them. It's sort of like is sometimes done in opera. So that's what a super title is. It's a lot, like I said, a lot like a subtitle in a movie. It's just above instead of below.
Interestingly, I went to see a production in London at the Brixton House, and it was a play written by Latin American teenagers in London, and they used super titles, but they used super titles in 3 different languages, and it was kind of very impressive. And you realize it's one of the things that can be done now. We have the technology to do this, and it's actually, I think it's a shame that it's not used more, because I think it's a kind of way of making plays accessible. Since
I might want to learn from you might want to learn from you how they did that, because I'm going to try to do it in 2 languages next year.
Yes.
And I need to learn how to do
absolutely. It's I think it's kind of theatres are only just beginning to pick up on the fact that it's possible. So yes, I will kind of put you in touch with the Brixton Theatre, who can tell you exactly how they did that, basically, because I think it's technology that should spread. Because I think that we shouldn't be bound by language barriers quite so much.
So can I ask a second question?
Sure.
Yeah, so I was, Veronica, you mentioned something about translating and then not when a director translates and then they read the translation and then they discover that a lot of things were omitted during the translation and they really want to change that. Why is it so difficult for that to be changed? I mean, in terms of you mentioning needing permission and stuff like that.
I missed some of that through the background, but you were asking, I think, is that right? You were asking what the responsibility of the translator is to change a translation if the director finds there's things missing in the translation. Is that right?
Yeah,
definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Would anybody else like to answer that? We've got.
Yeah, I guess because we were talking about how when we were working with the stage readings and we were very limited in time, right? So we have like 3 weeks to stage a reading. And sometimes it's like we are not sure, like the director and the actors, like we would like to change something, but we're not sure, like if we should, change it ourselves or talk to the translator, and it takes time. And like, whose responsibility is that? If I see something that would improve the text, should I just change it, or should I like talk to the translator and like this whole, the communication change? Who's
responsible? Well,
yeah.
Actually, it's interesting. Actually, I'll tell you about when I translated Pussycat in Memory of Darkness. I took it that went to the Finborough Theatre, and it's a monologue that runs in the full-length version. It runs 2 hours, and the director, the theatre director, and the actor said, "We can't possibly do this. We've got to get this on in 2 months. The actor can't remember that length of play, and it will be too tedious for an audience." So I had to talk to Neda, the playwright, and said, would she be happy with me cutting the play literally in half? And that's what I did. And then she approved the changes. And so it was a collaborative process, but it had to be done quickly. And so, yes, the translator has to kind of be willing to work with it, because the play wouldn't have gone on if I hadn't been willing to make those cuts.
Yeah. So
has anybody else got? Yep, Veronica.
Yeah, I guess
Thank you.
we might move to this to the next question. John, what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess the next question, and like interesting for me personally as well, would be what methods do you use to translate quickly? Yeah, because we were talking about speed and urgency. So what methods do you personally use? And maybe some of you who have experience also can share. But I guess, John, could you share?
Okay, yes, I'm very happy to share. Can you see me, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, fine, yeah. Well, yes, interestingly, one of the things is that, as I said, I don't speak Ukrainian, so, but initially I started translating in collaboration with a Ukrainian speaker, because that seemed like the quickest way of doing it. But I very rapidly found that actually other people have other things on their mind, and so they can't focus on it. And particularly Ukrainians, they have very many important things on their mind. So I realized that was not going to work. So actually what I then realized is that my collaborator can be Google Translate and an electronic translation. Now, there's a lot of kind of frowning on those things. You can't possibly use that. But actually, I've learned that one, because of my experience working with collaborators in the past, is that actually it can be a very effective way of translating. And certainly it gives you a quick understanding of what the play is about. And I think one shouldn't shun methods like that, but you have to use them very carefully. You have to check them back, and then you have to put, and there are, of course, use all the means at your disposal if you need to translate quickly, but then work with other people to make sure that you haven't made. Yes, I did make one large error in the first play I translated, in not realizing that an image referring to a red moon didn't mean a red moon at all. It meant menstruation. And the penny dropped afterwards, but when the playwright said that's what it means. Fortunately, she spoke English. But so you can make mistakes, but if there's just one mistake in the whole play, you've got the whole play translated, and those can be corrected during rehearsal. So anybody else got any thoughts?
I have two suggestions. First of all, to be fast is to have experience. The more experience you have, the faster you are. Second one is the word tools, if you use them wisely. For example, I try to tell it to all translators. Most of them do not understand it. 1% might use it. I use word in my language, and I've done shortcuts. For example, a long word, I just change it in the autocorrect feature. And anytime I had to write that word, I just remember the shortcut that I did the same way we use on chats, just 3 or 4 letters. And anytime I press paste, it just writes itself. But I have now a long list, like what's a special feature that you can do. So I just use Word really fast now, because I'm just writing in, in short letters, and then things write themselves just by autocorrecting it. So it's a smart tool. You can use Word as well, that's smartly.
Anybody else any thoughts on that? And does any, just as a matter of interest, does anybody think it's totally disreputable and unacceptable for me to translate the way I do?
Well, I've been always against Google Translate. I mean, I was always the enemy. But now there are actors that are sending to me, for example, Spanish plays, and they want to know if that's good or not. So, and they don't want to pay translators to do it before knowing what's in the play. So you know what I'm doing? I'm just using the word translations, so they get the flavor of the play on what it's about. So yeah, I'm using that tool. I know it's not okay, but it's okay when you just want to grab the idea, the general idea for where things are going.
Well, I think that there's a kind of pragmatism that we've got to be a little bit more pragmatic, because I think we have a barrier with translations in the UK, and I don't know whether it's true, is that there is a prejudice against foreign plays. And it's just that the world of English-speaking theatres is such an important organization, because it's beginning to kind of we're beginning to collaborate. We're beginning to get people from all kinds of different countries talking together. And I think that's absolutely important and we're using English as a way of communicating, but it allows us to communicate from different, and I think that's really important. So actually immediacy matters, I think, because if you're able to communicate what's happening in your country or your language now, rather than we look all at the historic plays, then I think it's really important to creating bridges of understanding.
Yeah.
This is a sort of a side note. So I in my considering having the super titles, also learning that it's very important to think of the particular dialect of the language spoken in the place it's going to be performed. because I learned that Arabic can be quite different depending on what country region you're in. Yeah. And also if I mean, I'm sure there's a range as there is with everything, but what is a reasonable fee to pay a translator for? Well, I guess this would be my shortest version would be 45 minutes. What would be a reasonable fee to pay a translator for that length of show?
That's a kind of a really difficult question to answer, because I think one of I basically there is a standard fee for rate for translators, which in English, which in sterling is about £120 a thousand. So you'd be talking about, if it's a 10,000 word play, you'd be talking about what a reasonable fee might be, perhaps £1,200, but that seems quite small for a whole play. But one of the problems is that actually funding is a major problem. And so for instance, for nearly all the Ukrainian plays, then I've funded them by doing other work and translating them without a fee. And I have a feeling that is true for a hell of a lot of translators. It shouldn't be like that, but that's how it is. But
well, I mean, of course, if I were hiring somebody in Tunisia to do it, at least I could pay them what would be good for them and would still be reasonable for me as the actor paying for a translation for a festival I might not get paid for doing. So, but yeah, at least the exchange rate would be in my favor and I could still give more than what they might normally get there.
So I think, yes, in terms of you would be half to three, just in dollars, basically.
Yeah, this is more than I could pay.
Of course.
I mean, most of these, yeah, especially because, oh, well, now it can only be used in Tunisia. I have to get a different one for Egypt. But yeah. Yeah, I think that's why the festival that I did in Italy, they usually get they have partnerships with universities for grad students to do the translation as part of their studies. Yeah.
And this is why I would urge collaboration, because the thing is that a grad student will be able to do a basic translation, but I think it's really important that the person, if you're translating for theatre, you have some knowledge of theatre. You can write. That's why. So you divide the fee, your grad student, and then you can ask an experienced theatre translator to not do the full translation, but then make it into something that works for the stage.
And there were
actually prices in Albania house only about theater. I'm just giving them higher prices than a normal translator, because I know that it's specific. Okay, not to take present that I'm doing most of the work because I'm editing it later, and it's like going from sentence to sentence, like, because it's very specific translation. But I mean, if I had really experienced translators in theater, I would have paid them more, because it's very specific, actually. I mean, playwrights and screenwrights understand it, it's the same thing, or actors or directors, but to combine language knowledge and stage knowledge at the same place, it's a very rare case, actually. It's not so common.
I think you're right. And I think that's what the point I was making about, actually, you can't, playwrights write with subtext, and you can't translate it, but you have to translate it. So you have to understand how it works well enough to be able to recreate that in the target language. Actually, I'll just answer. There's a question that Ginello has just asked in the chat. She asked, how do I collaborate on translation projects? And she's asked who does what. And I think what you were making, Angela, the point you're making, actually, the editor does a hell of a lot sometimes if the translation has not gone far enough. And I'll give you an example of how I've worked. For instance, there's a project called Free All Words, which is translating poetry from Belarusian and Ukrainian rather than plays. And in that, I've worked in two different ways. One is with there's a poet, Hannah Komar, who I've been working with, and she translates. It's a slightly more than literal translation into English, and then I edit it, and then actually there was an example I was to think about the other night where the process went wrong on Hannah to give me a flavor poem, but because it was a poem written in verse and it wasn't laid out in rhyme and meter, and it wasn't laid out, I didn't understand that, so I didn't understand what the rhyme and meter structure was, and it suddenly gave the voice of the poem in rather than Veronica.
Yeah, but she keeps
because I'm just wondering if I noticed the recording stop, so it started again. She obviously heard me. Yeah. So
I'm back.
I'm just wondering how. Hello there, Veronica. Hi. Yes. So I'm just wondering how long we've got actually. Should we begin to wind it up, because you originally said we should be going on for an hour?
Can I add a small note? Can I add a small note?
I'm happy to go on if everybody else is.
Can I add a small note?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody is using, but at least for translators that do not have native language English, it's a very important point, the word reference website. Because anytime you have problems to understand cultural context, and you go and ask there, and people strive to help you, and it's a very important. I mean, it's I don't know, it's a revelation that plays, because anytime, especially when there are old classic authors and you don't understand the context, sometimes you can't explain it because you don't come, for example, from England. Word reference guys are always there to help you, and you help them. But I mean, with Albanian, it's not that people ask a lot, so but I mean, it's a very important tool for translators actually to understand the context and to bring the right meaning to things.
That sounds
it says sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that was a concern for me when I was translated into Italian by the grad student, and there was no collaboration. I wasn't included as the writer and performer in that process. I was not sure if the 1940s slang, United States during World War II slang, was going to, whether this student was going to have any knowledge or understanding of what the slang meant in order to translate it. So I don't know how it came out in the end. So that's a great resource.
Yes, I don't know that. I must start using that. Is it that the website adjusts just the word reference?
Yeah, wordreference.com. I put it in the chat. I already found it.
But yes, Heather, you're kind of right about that. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
it's a very good source. Actually, very, very helpful. I mean, I've been translating classics. If I didn't have the website, I would have been lost sometimes. Yeah.
But, okay. So how long should we go on, Veronica?
Well, I guess maybe one last question to discuss. You choose which one. Or maybe like from the list, or maybe you want it from you know, or maybe some of you have some other question that you would like to discuss as well, and we could round up a little bit.
The things to factor in when you asked.
Yes, I'm here.
Chinello, you asked what are the things to factor when giving out a translation budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, we covered that a bit with Heather just now. I think it depends so much on the situation. With for instance, the Ukrainian plays. For me, what mattered was that the playwright got paid, because incomes in Ukraine have been suffered greatly as a result of the war, and the state playwrights in particular, but not just playwrights and theatres, have really suffered. So my prime motive was to make sure that the playwright got as much as possible. So, for instance, then there weren't many cases where there was money available. For instance, when we there was a production of one of Nedda's plays in Scotland, and it was quite important that the playwright got as much as possible. And if there was any left over, I would take it. But the first factor is how you should be paying, even if it's a play in translation, you should be paying the playwright as much as you would a new play in the native language. So that's why it should be a key part of the budget of theatres. And I don't know whether that kind of quite answers your question. Chinello, what kind of things were you asking? Were you asking more detailed questions than that?
Yes, of course. I mean, like, what do you factor in the budget for the translation budget? Like, I don't know, maybe the people you're working with, the time and energy involved, things like that.
Well, as I was saying to Heather earlier, there are standard rates for translations, but one of the things is that they don't apply easily to theatre work, because translating a play or translating a poem, in particular, there is a huge amount more work than a simple word rate. The word rate that I quoted, £120 a thousand, was for translating prose, but poetry and stage work is much more work. So it's kind of I would say that it's that you should start from the time you occupy, but you have to judge that against what other translators change. So if, for instance, you take 6 months to translate a play, and it might be entirely valid, you're not going to get paid for 6 months' work, because somebody else may be able to do that translation in 1 month. So you have to kind of find out what the average rate for translation in wherever you're working is. And that's not a very helpful answer, but I'm not sure I can be, because it's basically, translation is like, it's always the thing that's last funded in any budget. Translators have been traditionally badly paid, and they're considered, it's because so many people are bilingual, translators is not considered a high level skill, which it is. And there's a kind of debate in the US at the moment over subtitlers for films, because that's become really important. And basically they're being very badly paid, and they're considering strike action for it, because it's not considered a skilled profession yet. I mean, I think it is. It's an underrated profession. And I think one of the reasons it's underrated is because a lot of translators are women, and women get badly paid. And I think so there are a whole raft of reasons why translation is, well, I think it's vitally important, which is why I do it. And so it should be better paid, but it isn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I guess, John, we already can round up a little bit and finish up, I guess. No?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So actually, shall we just go around everybody who's left and just say if they can just give 30 seconds of saying goodbye, but just key things they've got from this discussion. So let's start with Adijoki. She's there.
Yes, it is, and I really enjoyed
Hi.
this. I'm on the road, it's a bit noisy. So can I just type what I need to say?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Adijoki. And yes, send me your contact details via Veronica, because we want to get some views. Yeah, Adijoki was talking about translating some plays from Yoruba into English, which I think would be great. So we should do that. Okay, Jerry, are you there?
Jerry, yeah, what did you learn? What did you find out from our today's discussion? What was the most interesting for you? Recap for us. Share a few words.
Sorry, like I said earlier, I'm in a very, very uncomfortable place. So, but I have followed, and what is interesting for me is, striking the balance between translating English and translating the artistry of the work. The lady there, Yewande, who is on this platform today, is the one we worked together on the Insulted Belarus, project. And in the course of working, which was why I wanted her to be on this session, and I'm excited she's able to make it. Sorry, it's very noisy around me. So for me, it has further explained those important lessons that one needs to note in translating works, not just from English language to another language or from another language to English language, but being able to carry forward the imageries and the beauty of the writing itself, which is quite important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Angela.
John, for this.
Sorry. I just confirmed that internationally that there are three main points. First of all, you have to combine translation skills and stage skills. Second, theater translators are everywhere underpaid. And third, you really have to love theater to do this job.
Thank you. Okay, I'm totally with you. And Chinello.
Hi. Okay, so this was a very, 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 very good experience for me. At least I know the things that are involved in translating, especially as I go into the project I want to work on. And also I'm seeing the kind of important details when it comes to theater translation. And hopefully when I get such work in the future, I will know how to work with directors in terms of translating their works in different languages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather.
Hello. I was excited that this was a topic for today because it's on my mind, obviously. Problem with a lot of these festivals that I want to have the translation for is they don't plan them ahead enough for you to be able to effectively get a translation, and then there's the challenge of I can't even sometimes have somebody running my show that knows English well enough to follow in my script, much less being able to run the super titles. So there's just a bunch of challenges for me to think about. So this is nice in that it's helped me learn a little bit more toward that goal.
Thank you. Okay, and Ahmed. Ahmed, have we got you here? No? Okay. So have I missed anybody else? No.
I guess
well,
no.
That's fine. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for coming and joining us. It's been a bit random, but I think that's part of the process of translation. So, and I'll think about the question. So if you'd like to have another theatre club about translation, I'd certainly be interested to do it. But I'll take on board all things that you say. And actually, lots of people have shared their details in the chat. So it would be great to follow up in the discussion. And if you can send to Veronica ideas of what things that you'd like to talk about, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Oh, I can see Chinella has also said I'd like another session. So thanks, Chinella.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions, yeah, you can always write.
Okay, well, Veronica, back to you.
Yeah, so I guess